Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this episode of Inside UVA Arts, a behind-the-scenes look at the arts at the University of Virginia. This afternoon's discussion will focus on creating the exceptional student experience. Crucial to the UVA residential experience, the arts at UVA inspire students to innovate, create, collaborate, and explore. For many of our students, the arts at UVA complement their training in other disciplines, giving them the opportunity to build on their foundation or to discover talents and interests that will shape their careers and life's passions. I'd like to welcome today's distinguished panelists. First, we have Kiana Pilson, Arts and Sciences 21, majoring in sociology and minor in dance. She's a Miller Arts Scholar and a 2020 Arts and Sciences 09, majoring in studio art, and a UVA Arts Council member. And finally, Richard Will, Chair, Department of Drama, and Associate Professor of Music, and former Chair of the McIntyre Department of Music as well. So we're well covered with all three of you. Thank you for joining us today. And just a reminder to our audience out there, we'll be taking questions. So please submit your questions and we'll get to them just a little later in our program. So shall we begin, everyone? Kiana, can you tell us a little bit about how your understanding of dance has changed since coming to the University of Virginia?
Yes. So I think just my understanding of the possibilities that's in dance, within dance and what you can do with it, and what dance even looks like has changed a lot, especially in like these past 4 years. I know growing up for me, I did dance in a few different kinds of environments, in religious spaces with praise dance, in like high school and middle school, kind of like pep rally kind of teams. I was in color guard, and all of these experiences were really valuable to me. But growing up, I thought dance had to look a particular way. I thought you had to have a particular kind of training to kind of be validated within the dance sphere. And I thought that while I loved all of the things that I was doing, I didn't think it could be really more than just a hobby for me. And so like, I still love all of the kinds of dance that I haven't been traditionally trained in. I still really respect, but I assume that if I wasn't doing those kinds of things, then like I would never make it as a dancer. And I think that perception was just very narrow. I got to the University of Virginia and I saw people dancing and creating in a way that I had never seen before. I saw dance as not just performance, but as a mode of thinking, as a way of working out problems. I discovered different relationships I could have with an audience. It didn't just have to be performance-based, but it could be like interactive. And I saw students like engaging in dance in a way that was really creative and in a way that I had never seen before. So I really think since coming to the university and like in my past 4 years, I've just like really opened my eyes to all of the things that I can pursue, both like now in school and also post-grad in dance, and also just what dance looks like. So.
And I'm just curious, during this time of COVID-19, how have you managed to still pursue your dancing and practice it and perform it and engage in a meaningful way also with your fellow performers as well?
So it definitely looks really different. I tend not to like dancing in isolation. I dance socially, and that's much more difficult now. But I think with all of the arts, we're just having to be more creative. So I know that I'm very thankful for like the dance program at UVA, because if it weren't for my modern class 2 times a week, I probably wouldn't be moving a whole lot. But just like having the requirement is very helpful. I also think a lot of dancers are pursuing film in a way that not all of us have before. I'm not a director, that's not my skill set, but I have a couple of friends who either are directing or like working on different film projects, and that's something that I've been able to engage with. I have a friend who's actually doing a residency right now, who's a UVA alum, and I've been able to dance in her films and think of creative ways to do solos and site-specific pieces. I know in the spring, I was in a dance composition class, and we had to like create pieces that were very specific to wherever we were. And so the dancers in our class came up with very creative things. People were finding ways to move their camera and change their perspective. People were using the only setting. So I did my dance in my living room, but I kept my frame very specific and played with like seeing and perception and being watched. And so I think times like these are like really hard for creating art, but it's also allowing dancers specifically to just come up with more creative modes of thinking of what dance can do and thinking of how we can create it.
Well, that's really interesting. It sounds like it's really forcing you to be even more creative in different ways sometimes. So that's great to hear. Ellen, how was your time, or how did your time studying the arts at UVA inspire your shape your life and your life's passions?
Well, when I was at UVA, I was a studio art and art history double major. And so in art history, you take a test and your score is private and your efforts are private. You and your professor know, but for studio, it's a public critique. And not public in the sense, but your entire class, you put forth a piece for your portfolio, and your entire class and your professors, they tell you how you can be better. And you're also forced to explain your thinking, explain your creative process. And I did not have a career in the arts. I went into finance, and just being able to have the confidence to explain how I thought through an analysis, present a presentation to a superior, and be okay with constructive criticism. I think that was a skill I definitely learned in the art department. And you know, there were times when I was told to go back to the canvas, and that's a humbling thing to hear, that you need to go back and keep working. But I think it challenged me to think more highly of myself and more, you know, what I could accomplish. I was pushed in the art department in such a great way to think about myself and how I could accomplish more, and it was pretty great. I think another thing, when people at UVA and then when I graduated heard I did painting, they said, well, I wouldn't have the talent for that. And I realized really early on in my 4 years, it's not about talent. It's really about time and energy and commitment, and the way that you commit to a project, and the energy you put into it and the time that you put into it. That's what creates amazing work product. It's not the talent, it's the commitment. And I think that's informed my career. I think that's informed my personal life choices and the way I manage my time and what I know I'm able to accomplish. And I mean, to say that the art department changed the way that I saw myself and what I was capable of career-wise and then personally, it would be an understatement for sure.
Well, that's interesting to hear you say that. I mean, I certainly know that creating art takes a tremendous amount of discipline as well, both as you study it, and you learn how to perform it or create it, but it's that day-to-day commitment and discipline as well that is also a really important part of the passion that may fuel you, but it's showing up every day and doing the work that really ultimately gets you through it. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Richard, you know, you have a foot in two incredible departments here at the University of Virginia, having formerly been the chair of the McIntyre Department of Music and currently the chair of the Department of Drama here. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the range of arts experiences available to students on grounds at UVA.
Sure. I think that the range is pretty amazing, and it's grown. I've been here since 2001, and it's grown a tremendous amount since I came. And there are just kind of overlapping domains. There's all that the departments and the museums and the festivals and so on offer, you know, largely kind of faculty organized and running through the departments, whether it's classes or performances and events. There's then an enormous domain of student sponsored and organized and run also events, not classes, but events and productions and performances and so on. Some of that is kind of formally organized. I think the last time I I checked the list. There were 25 certified dance organizations at UVA, and that's just dance. And then there's also all of the people who are dancing together who haven't formed an organization, all the people who play in bands, all the people who do all the other stuff sort of informally. So I think it's there's really an enormous range of activity going on, an enormous number of opportunities. So a couple other things I'll say. One of them is, I think both Leellen and Kiana alluded to this. So given that we do the arts here in a kind of liberal arts context, we don't have the kind of pre-professional conservatory training that actually a lot of large state institutions do, but UVA didn't go that route. It means that most of our students, if not all of our students, are kind of equally involved in other things, whether they're double majors, or they're majors in one thing and minor in another, or they are a major in something and also running their arts organization on the side. And so I think that the kinds of experiences that that both of you were talking about, actually, which is learning arts as like an alternate way of thinking, as an alternate way of being in the world, learning skills there that transfer elsewhere. I have to say, since I previously taught in more of a conservatory style situation, that happens a lot here. And when I think about where alumni of both the departments that I've been involved in, where they've gone, the range is really quite extraordinary, whether it's in the arts or in finance or in law or in arts administration, or so that I think is a really a distinctive feature of the arts at UVA that I really like. And I think I can't give a list of all of the different kinds of artistic traditions that one might get involved in here. There are a lot. I think that's better done on our websites, and I encourage you all to go visit that. I will say, as at most American universities, the kind of curricular side of the arts at UVA was historically very focused on the kind of white European American traditions, teaching and performing and so on. That has changed a great deal in the last 20 to 30 years. And I think we can expect to see that change even more going forward. I think that we have a much wider range of artistic traditions that we're doing that are available as opportunities, but I think that range needs to and is and will continue to expand.
Thank you. Kiana, you're a Miller Arts Scholar. For our audience out there who may not be familiar with that programming, I was hoping you might tell me a little bit, or tell us a little bit about the program, and also your experience in the arts beyond dance itself, as a student, experiencing other performances, other art forms. What's that been like?
Yes. So Miller Arts is basically a program that allows students from various different arts disciplines to apply for grant funding, thanks to the Miller family, who are very generous, for various arts projects and art supplies, depending on what you need. And so there are different levels of grants that happen throughout different parts of the semester that we're allowed to apply for. It also allows students to engage in like interdisciplinary discussions about art. And so the program requires us to take 2 semesters of a discussion class where artists of different disciplines meet together, and we talk about what we're creating. We talk about what it means to create art while getting our degrees, but also what it looks like to continue to create outside of college. And various different guest speakers come in to talk to us about that process too. I think one of the things that's very valuable about Miller Arts is, even if you enjoy dabbling in other arts, I know me personally, I don't always have conversations with artists who aren't in dance. So no matter how much I love to go to concerts or different programs and productions that are happening on grounds, or viewing different visual art in museums, I don't always have one-on-one conversations or like small group discussions with the people who are creating those different kinds of arts. And I think I have learned that we all think very, very differently. I know I don't have the same mind as any one dancer, but I do think just generally dancers tend to think differently about performance and about creating than maybe a visual artist would, or a poet would, or a director would. And so when we all get into a space and kind of have those discussions, I think it makes us all stronger because we envision kinds of different ways to think about art. We can learn about different priorities in creating art. And I think it expands our understanding of just like what that process can be like. So I definitely think that I have started considering different ways of composing and different ways of creating material after I have had those discussions with people who are creating different kinds of things than I am. So I think that's like one really amazing strength of the program. Personally, so that's a little bit about Miller Arts. Personally, I am a drama lover at heart. I am not an actor. That is also not my skill set. But I do like to engage in dance in those spaces. And so some of the things that I've also done at the university outside of the dance program has been dancing in drama productions. And I know that there are dancers who are involved in like a jazz ensemble project that's happening right now. So I definitely think there are a lot of different ways to engage in other kinds of disciplines if you're seeking that interdisciplinary feel.
Right. And how do you see the relationship between actually performing your art and your academic studies?
I think that there's a couple of different valuable things that happen when I am trying to decide which person I want to be that day or trying to engage in both. I know that dance provides me a space sometimes to walk away from my academic studies and to just use my body to explore different things. I know that especially in the time of quarantine and taking Zoom classes, I need time to be able to step away from that. And so dance is really valuable in that way. But I also think, and I kind of alluded to this before, I also think that dance is really helpful to work out problems that happen in academics and to think more creatively about what I'm studying. So I'm a sociology major, but I often in my classes, whether it's like sociology, philosophy, or other things in the humanities, I think I can get caught up in abstracting a lot of things, thinking up here, and engaging in my academics as not a person, but just like as an intellectual. And I think that's a trap that a lot of us can fall into in academics. Theory is great, all of those things are amazing, but I think sometimes when we separate our experiences from the things that we're thinking, we don't really get a holistic picture of what's happening. But in my movement practice classes, and especially in a class called Dance and Culture, which I've taken with Professor Katie Shetlick, we talked about what it looks like to merge those two things. Because as dancers, we understand that whatever we're feeling that day, whatever emotions we have, whatever experiences we have, that always comes into the room whenever we're performing. But I don't think we always think about that in academics. And so engaging in dance, both as like a performative thing, but also in an academic setting, allows me to remind myself that my experiences, my emotions, my feelings, those also come into the room whenever I'm creating theory or whenever I'm thinking through things. And I think having that mindset allows me to engage more fully and more holistically in my classes.
Wow, that's a terrific answer. Thank you. Lee Ellen, could you tell, for all of our audience out there, could you tell everybody a little bit about what the Arts Council is, what it does, why you joined, and what your experience has been like?
Sure. I absolutely love the Arts Council, and I think I've been a member for about 10 years. I joined shortly after I graduated from UVA, and it's a group of UVA alum, and we just have the privilege of helping to make projects on grounds happen. So students will submit grants to the committee, and so will faculty members. And we help decide how we're going to allocate funds and how, you know, these grants are going to come into view for the council. And I'm on the grants committee for the council, which is so fun. The grants proposal process is so intense, and what the students do and what the faculty do to get just grants even in the room to us, it's pretty impressive. And we have some incredible discussions in the grants committee. We get to really learn about just the student experience and how we get to be a part of that. I think that I'm challenged by some of these projects. They're just incredible. They're good growth for me, good growth for the committee, I would say. And so the lively discussion about the surrounding the grants is probably the most exciting part for me. And just knowing that we're affecting life on grounds. I mean, it affects Charlottesville, it affects students today. I mean, I graduated 11 years ago, and I still get to be part of the growth that happens on grounds in the community in the community UVA, in Charlottesville. I mean, that's pretty incredible. I really enjoy my time on the Arts Council.
Thank you. Richard, I have a question for you regarding the arts experiences and the benefits that our students receive from them. And I think maybe the flip side of this would be you're a UVA student and you decide that you want to study, I'll just pick a discipline, biology, and you bury yourself in the biology lab and you don't take advantage of any arts experiences at all during your 4 years at UVA. What have you missed, and what benefits a student by participating in the arts, whether it's taking a class or it's going to a concert or performance or a theater performance or actively creating themselves?
So you're trying to get me in trouble with all the biology majors on
Not at all.
On the call here. I think
you still have time outside the lab to participate in the arts and it can benefit them, I think. But I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
No, I know what you're saying. And this is Maya, everybody, just so you're not surprised. My COVID partner in all of this. Actually, I wrote down something that Kiana said a minute ago, because I think that she answered this question in some ways better than I can. You were talking about which person I want to be that day. And I think that in the arts, now I do actually think that this can happen in virtually anything that you get really deeply involved in, right? Including biology. But I think that certainly for me, when I was in college, for me now, I think for all of us, the arts allow us to explore, who we want to be that day, who we are, how we are in the world, and there are many, many dimensions to that. Whether it's communities that we come from, personal experiences that we've had, communities that we might like to join, ways that we might want to define ourselves that are strengthening traditions that we're familiar with, or not, jumping into new areas. And I think that because the arts, sorry, Kiana, I'm just kind of ripping off your answer here. Because the arts, you're engaging with those kinds of questions through, a lot of it is through emotion, and a lot of it is embodied. Whether you're a dancer or a musician or an artist, I mean, you're putting your kind of physical self on the line too. That I think that the arts are particularly apt at growing that kind of knowledge, or at allowing people to grow that kind of knowledge about themselves, about their communities, their friends, their families, people that they don't know, traditions that they don't know. Along with lots of other stuff. I mean, you learn history through the arts. You learn some politics. You learn a lot of technology these days. There are many dimensions that sort of come through that I wouldn't. Yes, and you learn more about cats. That I wouldn't necessarily say that it's better or worse than any other kind of knowledge forming that we have at the university, but it is particular. It's particularly intense, and it's, at least in my experience, particularly memorable. Now, of course, I went on to be a music professor, but nonetheless, I remember, and I talked to lots of people who are not music professors who remember their arts classes and their arts experiences in college, as kind of highlights, as kind of those things that stick with them and have stuck with them through life. So yeah, I think that's kind of how I would answer that.
Thank you. Kiana, you touched upon this actually quite a bit in your last comments, but maybe if you could just explore it a little further. Could you talk about some ways that you have worked with or experienced art with other student artists a little bit more?
Definitely. And I
times you may have others or just learned by.
Sorry, you broke up a little bit for me, but I think I got it.
I'm sorry. Yeah, just how you relate to other student artists and perhaps some of your experiences with student artists, whether it's collaboration or perhaps something that you them or experiencing their over your time here at UVA.
And I think we may have some pictures to share. But yes, I definitely think engaging with student artists at UVA has been really amazing because the students that I've been in different performances and different projects with are just very creative and very, very driven to tell the story that they want to tell. And so these first two pictures are from theater pieces that I've been in that I mentioned. The first one is from the Black Monologues. And so that show is a show that UVA tries to put on annually. And it's basically a collection of monologues and short group pieces that talk about the Black experience in this country and at this university. So that was really cool. I did that in my second year. I did a little bit of choreography for that. And I also did a solo piece where I was like the physical embodiment of somebody's words. So that was really fun. I definitely made a lot of friends and got to continue to create with friends that I already had. This next one is from Romeo and Juliet, which I also did, I believe, in my second year. And that was really great because the show that we were putting on takes place in the early 90s. And so I co-choreographed with a third year named Tatiana Blakely. She's also amazing. And we got to teach some actors who had dance experience and some who had no dance experience how to do group pieces, how to do fight battles, but instead of fighting with swords, they were fighting with dance moves. And these are all things that like weren't my ideas, but somebody just asked me to kind of like execute the plan that they already had. And so I just think the creativity of students in these productions and like the professionalism in which students really want to tell their stories or retell stories that we've already heard before, it's just something that's so unique and I had never experienced. And then the last few photos that I have are from different dance pieces that I've done in the drama department, like in the dance program through spring dance concerts. This first one, I was in a piece my first year, choreographed by Luke Williams, who was a fourth year when I was a first year. And it was part of his thesis. And this is one of the things that I was also talking about. He was using dance to work out a lot of ideas that he had and a lot of readings that he had read. And that was really cool because he had some structure to what he wanted us to do, but he let a lot of it in our hands. And a lot of the phrases that we did, we were coming up with ourselves. And it was a very collaborative kind of experience. We were able to trust each other and create what we were experiencing, what we were feeling, and bring that all into the space. So I think dancing at UVA, and especially dancing at other student and guest artist pieces, has been really liberating for me because it's allowed me to like have my own voice in dance. And I believe this next picture is also from that same piece. So that was really cool because I was a part of someone's thesis, but through movement. And this last couple of pictures is also from the dance concert. And these pictures are taken by Tom Daly, who is amazing and captures us in the middle of performance. But this piece was actually with a guest artist. Her name's Shandoa Goldman, and she had some very creative and very interesting questions that she was asking around winning and losing and power dynamics that we were exploring in this piece. And kind of like Luke Williams, but even more so, she had a very clear vision and a very clear structure to how she wanted the dance to look and the kind of things that she wanted us to perform. But a lot of it was also improvisation. So I like to think of that process as kind of like a sandbox. She gave us very clear guidelines of where we could stay, but after she set those guidelines, she just allowed us to play in that. And so no one performance looked exactly the same because a lot of the things that we were doing was completely improvised. So I just think the way that I've engaged with students at UVA, I've been able to see creativity, I've been able to see this drive and this passion for the arts that has been really amazing and really has allowed me to explore the kinds of questions that I also want to ask. And I know we might have lost Jody, but I hope that answered his question.
Yeah, hi everybody, I'm Emma. I'm the Program and Communication Director for UVA Arts, and I get to work very closely with Jody. He is having some technical difficulties. We're having some storms here, and I think his internet's being a little weird. Kiana, that was an amazing answer to the question, and it's always so wonderful to see arts in action, right? Seeing you on stage and with all of your fellow artists. So thank you so much for sharing those with us.
Of course.
So Lee Allen, you are based in Dallas right now and obviously passionate about the arts. We know that clearly from everything you've said so far. How do you think the Dallas community can enable UVA Arts to continue making an impact at the university?
Well, I want to first just say we have two amazing leaders in Dallas, Steve Smiley and Emily Robson. They're incredible, and their leadership here in Dallas with UVA alum and with the arts is pretty amazing. And then, secondly, I just think there has to be a realization that art is not just for the artists. Getting involved, UVA is changing and evolving so much. And I want to be part of the student experience from Dallas. I want to be part of what's going on at UVA from Dallas. And I mean, just y'all listen to Kiana. I mean, she's incredible. This is the way that this is the impact that UVA Arts has on these students. I mean, she's going to be a world changer, right? And I want to be a part of that process. I want to be inspiring these students to be their most amazing selves. I mean, that's how I know there's lots of UVA alum here in Dallas. All my friends are UVA alum, so I know they're there. And I know there's lots of UVA parents that want to get involved, that want to be part of the growth happening at UVA, that want to be part of the student experience. The student experience has changed so much in 10 years even. And I've loved seeing it. I've loved being a part of it. And with COVID, I know so many of us have felt this like, oh, we feel so sorry for these college students that can't have this amazing graduation or that can't. But as you can see, they're adapting incredibly. And it's inspiring to see college students and all they're able to accomplish in the arts. And I don't know, I learned so much from UVA. I gained incredible friendships. I gained an amazing education. UVA gave me so much. I want to give back, and I want to make sure that my voice on grounds is still part of the conversation. I want to be part of the good changes. I really want to be. And I think the UVA alumni in Dallas just have a responsibility. Let's get involved. Let's see, what Steve Smiley, what Emily Robinson can come up with for us to really be part of it.
Well, I'm back. At least I think I am. Sorry about the bad internet connection out here. It's been storming most of the day, and I guess it's a little a little rough where I'm out here, but I did catch most of that, Lee Ellen, and I've got to agree entirely. If Kiana represents our future, then the future is now, and we're in incredibly great shape, which I think is just remarkable. It's great. It's great to have heard everything that you had to say, and all of you, actually. I have one final question for our panelists before we start to entertain questions from our audience, and I hope our audience is going to submit some questions out there. But I guess since we're talking about creating an exceptional student experience in the arts here at the University of Virginia, I'd love to hear from everybody what you feel that we should be doing and can be doing, not only to continue that exceptional experience, but to expand upon it moving forward into the future. So I'd love to hear from each of you weighing on that. And then also maybe what are things that you think we do really, really well that make this a unique experience? So Kiana, you're up if you would.
Oh, wow. What an honor. I think that's a very big question with a very large amount of possibilities. But I think something that in the UVA Arts is already starting to do this really well, but I think just giving students space to say what we want to create and what that looks like. I think, and it has something to do with student self-governance at UVA. UVA students are very bold and passionate and are willing to say what they want. And I think we're already communicating that with faculty in very valuable ways. But I think the more that we see programs and structures that allow students to create within UVA Arts, like the various opportunities to apply for grants and like the Miller Arts program, and I know in the drama program, there's opportunities for students to write and direct different pieces. I think we can only benefit from more of that. But I do think that there's a lot of that already happening, and just listening to students well and allowing us to do what we do best and do what we love is a way to continue that and foster that well.
Great, thank you. Lee Ellen, your thoughts on this?
I think UVA is doing a really good job listening to students right now. Just like Kiana said, I think alumni need to be pulled in too. I think, and y'all do a great job of that. I think UVA does a good job of that, trying to keep alumni plugged into the processes. And we've talked about this the whole call. Art is not just for the artists; it's for Charlottesville community. It's for every student. My husband went to UVA and he was in engineering, and he can talk about experiences he had with arts that were on grounds. And it's just like Richard said, I mean, it impacted his life so much. I just think UVA is doing a great job of keeping the focus on the arts. Let's keep the focus on how we can grow as a community through art. Art is really powerful, and it can bring peace, and it can change societies, and it can help with transition of viewpoints and worldviews. And yeah, I just think keep the pressure on. Listen to the students for sure.
Great, thank you. Richard, how about you?
Well, I guess I would say all of the above, and maybe just add that I think another development again in maybe the last 10 to 15 years that I would love to see continue and grow in all kinds of ways is really substantive engagement between arts programs and activities at the university, and then what's going on in and around Charlottesville and kind of Central Virginia. And part of that, the university generates an awful lot of events and public events that people can attend, but there's a lot more to being engaged with the community than that. Working with artists from the community, welcoming them into our spaces and classes and so on, and working out in the community. So I think that's another piece of it that, as I say, I've seen a lot of change in the time I've been here, but I would like to see even more.
Well, I mean, I certainly agree with you in that regard. I think, at least in my mind, the arts are one of the greatest bridges that the university has into the community of Charlottesville. And it's a two-way bridge. It allows people to come onto the grounds to experience the arts that our students and our faculty are able to offer and our public-facing programs. And it's also an opportunity for our creatives to work with other people as well, other arts professionals, and to present and to perform and to share their experiences broadly with our community. And it continues to be a really, really, I think, vital and important bridge for the university. So I think anything we can do to continue to shore that up and make that happen is really important. I also, might say it is extraordinary and overwhelming as you go on the arts website and you see the offerings from all the departments and programs at the University of Virginia in a given day, what is going on in the arts pre-COVID, but even during COVID is really quite extraordinary. I want to pivot to some questions from our audience. I'd also like to thank my gracious co-host, Emma Terry, who filled in hosting duties for me while I was lost in space for a little bit. So I'd like to start out with this question that comes to us. Is the drama department going to be able to come up with some creative opportunities and support to allow in-person rehearsals for productions? And will there be more in-person classes offered in the spring? And Richard, I'm going to throw that to you.
Well, that is an interesting question, and it is governed by forces that are largely beyond the drama department's control. We are in a very productive conversation with Jody and the Provost's office. The Provost's office is the one that sets those guidelines that we have to follow. And I am hopeful that we will have meaningful in-person interactions in the spring. But as I say, I mean, it depends partly on the local and national epidemiological situation, and then how the university sees the best way of managing that.
Well, I look forward to continuing to work with you to make whatever we possibly can work, that it's safe for everybody.
I was going to say that sounded like a real administrator's answer, but unfortunately, that's where we are at the moment. Yeah, my apologies.
No, it's a very tough reality out there. We're all working under challenging circumstances, and I think first and foremost, we're concerned about the safety of our students, our staff, our faculty, and the general public out there in terms of presenting performances. And so we want to err on the side of being careful while still being able to foster creativity and performance out there. So it's a tough balancing act at the moment. What are some ways, and I'm just throwing these out to our panelists here, what are some ways that you think the arts can heal or impact us in a post-COVID world? That's post-COVID, which I hope is right around the bend at any moment.
Sure.
I think one of the things that I have noticed during COVID is how much everyone needs the arts. And Leland mentioned this earlier, but art isn't just for the artists. And I think sometimes we forget how important art is, and we forget how almost reliant we are, because it's a beautiful thing and it allows us to heal in a lot of ways. It allows us to imagine in a lot of ways. And just as simple as like TV shows and movies that could no longer come out, and people are really like thirsting for content and hungry for content because we're at our houses and we have less to do, or we can't see shows. I think that's when we really realize as a country, and within and outside of arts environments, people were realizing how much they really missed and need the arts. So I just think it serves a constant reminder of the imaginations that we can have, the hope and the joy that we can have. And I think even past COVID, where people might not realize as much as they do now how much they need the arts, just its presence is really helpful to continue to allow us to do the things that we do every day.
I think something that we should consider too is that there's a lot of pain in the country. People are being vulnerable. A lot of people just through COVID and isolation are having to say, I'm not okay, or I need help here, or how do I deal with these ugly emotions? And I think art is just right there to help you deal. I mean, just take this is very simple, but the coloring books for adults, right? It helps them, it brings them peace, it helps them work through some of their emotions. I think art is a perfect way to just address some of those hard emotions. And, you know, dance, what a great way to do that. Really feel inside your body, really get in touch with how you need to move. I think painting is great. Painting just brings me so much peace and so much stability. I think the art should be used productively, right? To help deal with some of these anxieties in our world. Art is a reflection of how society sees ourselves, right? And there's just a lot of unsettledness. And I think post-COVID and I think we're headed towards a little more peace in our world. A little bit, we're headed there. But I just think art, I want to see art become a way to heal people for sure.
I have a question from someone in New York City. In this age of COVID, could there be more arts from the university, performances, exhibitions, et cetera, shared with distant alums? So to answer that, first and foremost, we actually have a lot going on currently virtually in the arts all the time. And one of the best ways to find out about that is to go to the UVA Arts website, or if you've not signed up for the Arts newsletter, which Emma Terry, who was my co-host earlier for a short time, produces on a regular basis, very often 2 or 3 times a week. It gives a running tally of almost everything that is happening in the arts on the grounds of the university, and often in Charlottesville as well. So I encourage you sign up for that. But again, to our panelists, are there any plans to do more online, virtually, in terms of presentation and performances from some of the areas that you may be involved in?
So I'll jump in and say we have an online production running tonight, 7 o'clock and 9:30. So if you go on our website, you have to get a ticket, but it's free, and you can log in, and there it will be, UVA Arts. So that is happening. We are, again, depending on the epidemiological situation, planning to probably ramp that up even more in the spring. And I know many of the other organizations are doing, as Jody says, are doing a lot of work as well. Could I add something very quickly to the previous question?
Sure, please.
Just to say that, since I know many of you who are listening are very engaged in the arts and supportive of the arts, there is going to need to be some healing of the arts after COVID. A lot of arts institutions have taken really hard hits during this period. And I think particularly institutions that are, institutions that are coming from communities that were already vulnerable and that have been hit extra hard by the pandemic. And I think that for the arts to help us, well, one of the ways in which the arts can help us to heal is if all of us are attentive to the ways in which we can help. The university arts organizations are in some ways maybe a little less vulnerable, probably, because they're affiliated with arts organizations, but I'm thinking about independent theaters, gigging musicians, independent artists, and so on and so forth. One route so that art can heal itself and help society to heal is just sort of rekindling our enthusiasm and helping on that front.
Great, thank you. So I have a question about what upcoming projects are the three of you working on, and where can your personal work be found?
I guess I can go, even though I am continuing to formulate my answer. But I am actually in the process of restructuring or replanning some grant money that I've gotten through Miller Arts, because the original plan was to attend a dance intensive in the summer, and then the backup plan was to attend a dance intensive in the winter, and both of those things are not happening. So if anybody would like to reach out to me, you can email me at kep4xd@virginia.edu. But I haven't solidified my plans with that, but I plan to be collaborating with other students and perhaps independent artists to create either some kind of intensive for myself or a piece to be shared, maybe virtually or possibly like at a distance in the spring. And I think, like Richard mentioned, in the dance community, we've been talking about how many independent dancers are struggling and how it's important to be supporting them. And so that's something that I definitely want to do with this grant money that I haven't been able to use for my original purposes. So just because I'm also navigating what it looks like to safely perform and safely create with other people, and if that's a possibility, I don't have solid plans for next semester, but continuing to go to dance classes, whether that is online, in virtual, in person, or at a distance in person. I'm not exactly sure because I'm not on the department side of that, but continuing to support other artists who need it and finding a way to create creatively.
Great, thank you. Lee Ellen.
Well, I just started a new project. In town, I continue to paint. That's my creative outlet. And so I have commission work that I've been doing over the past couple of years. But I've started I'm in talks with a gallery about creating a portfolio of work that I can submit to them that they can kind of help me get out there. So I've just started that up. My biggest creative endeavor over the past 5 years has been having my 3 children. And so that is what I've spent a lot of my energy and time on, but I'm painting again and it's exciting. And then I love being part of the Arts Council. There's a lot that goes with that. I'm really passionate about what the Arts Council is doing at UVA. So those are my creative outlets, and I do have a website, but it's just my name.com.
Richard, do you have any work you're able to share?
Well, Maya and I have just finished a book, actually. It's not about cats. It's about an opera by Mozart called Don Giovanni. It's really a performance history and analysis, and is rooted in, I spent a few years listening to audio recordings and watching video recordings going all the way back to the beginning of the 20th century. Don Giovanni is a very controversial work, right? It's based on the Don Juan story, and it really gives you that history of its performance gives you a pretty some really interesting insight on the histories of gender roles, at least in the West, and the ways in which those have evolved and been perceived, along with just countless changes in musical performance styles and acting styles and design and so on and so forth. So that is going to be published by University of Chicago Press sometime probably in the fall of 21. So yay, it'll be great. It's a page turner.
Great. Some things I want to share with you. We have not a question, but a message that Shakespeare on the Lawn is performing a reading of King Lear this Friday evening. The Zoom link is on their Instagram page, so please check that out. We have a message from Paul Tyler as an alumni from the class of 1976 with a double major in drama and English. I am really impressed with all the progress since then. I can also attest that many of the same qualities that made the arts at UVA such a huge part of my life are still intact and have grown exponentially based on what I have heard today. Thanks to all for what you have accomplished. Always want to share good news. That makes me feel very good, Paul. Thank you. Another question, would endowments help? Yes, endowments would help. So anybody who wants to contribute to an endowment, please just reach out to me at jkielbasa@virginia.edu, and I would be happy to connect you with somebody who can provide information regarding our endowments. We also have a fund for artistic excellence, which we are using currently to be able to make sure that our programs and departments can complete their current missions during COVID, and that we can continue to grow the arts and the arts experience at the University of Virginia. I have a specific question, which is, and I don't know the answer, and this could have been when I was out for a brief time with problems with the internet. But will there be a virtual Black Monologues production in spring 2021?
That is an excellent question. I would not be the person to ask because I have not been in those channels for the past few months, but I definitely think Professor Teresa Davis in the drama department has been spearheading, I think, the past few productions, even though it is student directed. And so I can definitely check with her and come back, or if anyone would like to look her up. But I do think that they are trying to do something because it's such a beloved production that happens at the university, but I'm not positive.
All right, thank you. And our longtime friend, supporter, and chair of the Arts Council, Gretchen Tibbetts, has weighed in with what's your most significant UVA Arts related memory? She shares that hers is the bicentennial. Thank you, Gretchen. So if the three of you could share your most significant UVA Arts related memory.
Well, I can go first. If
okay,
people
sounds
need
good.
time to think. It happened in one of the productions I mentioned earlier in Romeo and Juliet, which is a production that happened through Shakespeare on the Line. We performed it in the Student Activities Building, and our opening night, the power went out. And I don't know exactly what was happening. I think some construction was going on. And so like an entire wing of the university didn't have power. And we realized this about 2 or 3 hours before the curtain call. And so we are just waiting for the university maintenance to tell us if we're going to be able to perform and what would happen if we can't perform. And so we're just sitting there. We're getting into our costumes and our makeup, but doing it with our phone flashlights, and everything's a little bit hectic. And we decided that if the power didn't come on about 20 or 30 minutes before the production, we would call it and we would tell everybody that they would have to go home, or we weren't letting people in, but we were telling people that we would not put on the show until the last minute. Our assistant director and our director, Kristen Barrett was our director, and Jessica Harris, our assistant director, who were amazing. They gathered us together in our huddle and they said, you know what, rain or shine, we're gonna put on this performance. We gathered a bunch of flashlights and we asked audience members to turn on their flashlights. And we did an entire performance on our opening night in the dark. But it was probably one of the coolest and the most memorable experiences I will ever have. So shout out to Shakespeare on the Line and everybody that participated in that. That was really amazing.
Lee Ellen, how about you?
Well, mine is just not as exciting as that. I'm afraid. I was waiting to hear what y'all were going to do the whole time you were telling that story. I had a really hard fourth year. They brought in a visiting artist to critique, and I had a really hard critique one day. And I was just, as a fourth year, you're like, do I not have this down? Which is a great life lesson for me to learn. No, you don't have anything down. You're still working on yourself. You're still growing. Don't get cocky. And the visiting artist was part of the critique, and my professor and students around me, it was just not a great critique. It just wasn't my best work. And I remember walking away from that and thinking, oh man, I am just, and one of my fellow students that was in the art department with me was a football player on the UVA football team, which just goes to show you, I mean, art is for everybody, y'all. And he was this 6'5", 6'6", huge guy. And he walked up to him and he said, you can do this. Don't doubt yourself. And I went back and I reworked the piece, and I came back and it was my best work I'd ever done. And that memory has really, really stuck with me. And just the importance of the visiting artist critiquing my work, huge. You've got to have outside voices. And then you've got to have community to lift you up and tell you that you can be better. And then when you get knocked down, to say, no, you've got this, don't doubt yourself. And that's probably my favorite memory of all of, it's a pretty emotional memory. It's not as exciting as performing in the dark, but it sat with me forever, and I've never forgotten it.
Thank you. Richard.
Dear, I have a lot. So I'm going to be an administrator again, and I'm going to say this, one of the things about being a department chair is that periodically, actually very often, one of the things that you're asked to do is draw up these kinds of inventories of all of the great things that your students and colleagues are doing. There's a yearly review. There are reviews in between. Sometimes this is for, applying for money and so on. First time I did that in music, which would have been way back in 2006. I'd been in a music department for 16 years at that point, not this one, but I'd been in, but I'd been sort of doing my thing. And so we're working through this thing, and I pulled together this report, and I'm looking at it and I'm going, where is all this? Where are all these people coming from? This is amazing. The amount of stuff we're doing, the numbers of students that we're involving from all across the university, the numbers of things that my faculty are doing. And so that was that first time I did that, because it was such a surprise to me. It still sticks a little bit in my mind as, left me a little bit awestruck. It's been my pleasure to have that experience again and again and again over the years. And so I'm going to stick with that one for now.
Well, that's a solid one, Richard. I think that works really well. I'll quickly share. I'm going to cheat. I'm the moderator, so I get two. I think without a doubt, the bicentennial, because it was an opportunity to highlight the work of, over 800 of our students and faculty on a stage in front of the rotunda in front of 20,000 people. And it was an extraordinary evening. And the work that our artists did that evening was just exceptional. And it made me really, really proud. But there's another moment that was a quiet moment. And that was the very first President Speaker for the Arts was Tina Fey. And I remember going in the middle of the day. The talk from Tina was going to be in the amphitheater later that evening to check the setup out. And it was one of those beautiful fall days at UVA where it's just good to feel alive, about 60 degrees, clear blue skies, the leaves changing on the lawn. And I was headed back up, passing by the lawn rooms and the pavilions. And all of a sudden I heard this low hum, and it was as if it was in the bricks and then in the columns. And I got up almost to where the rotunda is, and I followed the hum, and it started to resonate even deeper. And there, underneath the rotunda in that little alcove area, was a student practicing his cello. And I can't explain beyond that, just was, but it was exceptional. It was just kind of one of these strange little moments where he was practicing his cello on a perfect fall day at UVA in the middle of the school year. And it kind of summed it all up for me, the feeling that you can get from the arts and how important it is to the overall experience at the University of Virginia. We have a lot of questions we were not able to answer and cover today. And to our audience out there, my apologies for that. I want to thank Lee-Ellen and Kiana and Richard for their time and their wonderful answers to all of these questions, and for all of the work that they do. We're really grateful. And we hope to see you at another time, at another Inside UVA Arts moving forward. And to everyone else out there, stay safe and be well, and thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Jody.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.